Hi there. I am so glad you're here today because we are getting into something foundational: why stories matter. Before we talk about crafting and sharing your own stories, it's important to understand the why. Why do stories resonate so deeply? Why do they connect us in ways that other forms of communication can't? By the end of this video, you'll not only know why storytelling is powerful, but you'll also feel inspired to bring it into your own podcast. So let's get started. So stories are wired into our brains. They are more than entertainment. They're how we're built to communicate and understand the world. At a biological level, our brains love stories because they help us focus and process information in ways that plain facts can't. So when you hear a well-told story, something incredible happens in your brain. It starts syncing with the storytellers. I know it sounds weird, but this phenomenon is called neural coupling or mirroring. It allows the listener's brain to fire in the same pattern as the speaker's. Essentially, your brain is experiencing the story as if it were happening to you. So let me give you an example. Let's say I describe the smell of freshly brewed coffee filling a sunlit kitchen or the sound of waves crashing on a rocky shore. Your brain doesn't just process these words. It visualizes and smells and feels them. That is the magic of storytelling. It activates the sensory and emotional parts of the brain, creating an experience, not just a message. Now, why does this matter for your podcast? Well, in today's world, attention is a scarce resource. Stories cut through the distractions. They create coherence, a structured narrative that our brains can follow and remember. So I want you to compare these two examples. Number one in five people feel disconnected from their communities. Or number two, Jane moved to a new city for her dream job, but weeks later, she found herself eating dinner alone every night, wondering if she'd ever feel at home. Which one sticks with you? The second example brings the statistic to life through a relatable and emotional narrative. And when emotion is involved, something else happens. Your brain releases dopamine, and that chemical not only makes us feel good, but it also enhances memory. It's why you vividly remember your wedding day or the birth of your child or a pivotal moment in your life. When you tell a story, you're not just sharing information. You're giving your audience a gift, an experience they can connect with and remember and act upon. So stories are how we make sense of the world. Humans are natural storytellers, and it's no accident. Stories are how we've always made sense of a complex and ever-changing world. From the earliest cave paintings to today's podcasts and Netflix binges, we use narratives to connect and learn and find meaning. Think about the last time you tried to explain something complicated to a friend or a colleague or even a child. Did you just list facts, or did you use a story to make it relatable? Maybe you talked about how a project went off the rails and what you learned from it, or how a seemingly small moment turned into a life lesson. That's because stories translate information into something our brains can understand and remember. When we're faced with raw data, our minds often tune out. For example, hearing, "Our company grew 30% last quarter," doesn't leave much of an impression. But if someone says, "Our team faced impossible odds, a tight budget, a ticking clock, and a client who almost pulled the plug, but we came together, got creative, and exceeded expectations by 30%, you immediately grasp the significance. This is the power of storytelling. It creates context. When information is framed in a narrative, it transforms from something abstract to something tangible. Stories create coherence, meaning each part builds onto the next, making it easier to follow and more engaging to process. But it's not just about making information clearer. Stories also make it sticky. Research shows that we're more likely to remember a story than a series of unrelated facts. Why? Because stories are structured in a way that mirrors how our brains naturally process information. We think in terms of beginnings and middles and ends, just like a good story. Whether you're explaining a big idea or teaching a lesson or sharing your personal journey, stories act as a bridge between abstract concepts and real-world understanding. They help your audience see themselves in your message, and that's where true connection happens. In a noisy, fast-paced world, stories are your superpower. I know you keep hearing it here. I keep saying it here. Stories and your voice are your superpower. They cut through the clutter, they create clarity, and they leave a lasting impact. And as a podcaster, this is one of your greatest tools. You're not just sharing information, you're shaping how your audience understands and experiences the world. Stories make us feel, and feeling drives action. So if there's one thing you take away from storytelling, let it be this: emotion is what makes stories unforgettable. Think about the last time you cried at a movie, or laughed uncontrollably at a podcast, or felt a lump in your throat during a heartfelt TED Talk. That wasn't by accident. Emotions are the glue that binds memories and drives action. When a story connects emotionally, it doesn't just stick, it inspires and it motivates and it moves people to take the next step. Okay, so if you want your podcast listeners to take action, whether it's subscribing or sharing your podcast or making a change in their own lives, you need to connect with them emotionally. Data and logic inform, and that's important, but emotions inspire. So let's take fundraising as an example. Imagine you're raising awareness for a cause. You could say, every year, over 3 million people experience hunger. And that's an important fact, but it doesn't evoke a personal response. Now try, meet Maria. She's a single mother working 2 jobs, but some nights she skips dinner so her kids don't go to bed hungry. That story doesn't just convey the issue, it humanizes it. You want to create an emotional connection, and that doesn't mean you need to manufacture drama or tell grand, life-changing stories. Sometimes the most powerful moments are the simplest. You want to share a time when you doubted yourself and you pushed through, or you want to describe the journey of achieving a small victory that once felt impossible. But the key to that is being authentic. Authenticity breeds trust, and trust amplifies the emotional impact of your story. Not every story needs to make your audience cry. Maybe you want to inspire laughter or spark curiosity or even instill a sense of calm. The emotion you choose depends on the purpose of your story. So if you're looking at inspiration, for example, share a story of transformation or perseverance to encourage action. Or if you want to use humor, use a funny and relatable story to create connection and joy. By tailoring the emotional tone of your message, you can create a deeper and more meaningful connection with your listeners. At the end of the day, stories aren't just about what happened. They're about how it felt. They're about the shared human experience, the moments of joy and heartbreak and discovery and hope that bring us together. As a podcaster, you have the power to evoke those emotions in your audience. And when you do, your stories won't just be heard, they'll be felt and remembered and acted upon. So let's talk about something we all crave, connection. At its core, storytelling isn't just about sharing, it's about building trust. And trust is the foundation of any meaningful relationship, whether it's with your podcast audience or your clients or your community. But here's the thing about trust. It doesn't come from perfection. It comes from authenticity. When you share a story, especially a personal one, you're inviting your audience into your world. You're saying, this is who I am. This is what I've been through, and this is what I've learned. So I want you to think about Brené Brown, who has built an entire movement around vulnerability. Her stories are not perfectly polished, but they're real and they're raw and they're deeply relatable. That's why they resonate. When you show your audience that you're human, you create a space where they feel safe to be human too. For example, imagine telling a story about a podcast episode that didn't go as planned, and we all will have them over time. There's definitely going to be some. Maybe your microphone failed. Maybe you stumbled over your words. I do that a lot. By sharing that experience and how you handled it, you're not just telling a story, you're showing your audience that it's okay to make some mistakes and keep going. We've all heard the phrase, actions speak louder than words. Stories are your actions. They show your values and your intentions and your perspective without you having to spell them out. So let me give you yet another example. You could say, I value community and connection. Or you could share a story about a listener who reached out after an episode, telling you how their words helped them or how they felt seen. By sharing that story, you're showing, not telling, how much your connection means to you. And this isn't just about listing your achievements or your credentials. And I know it's very tempting to say, oh, well, I have this degree, this degree, this degree, and that is why you should trust me. It's about showing the journey that brought you to where you are. For instance, if you're teaching your audience about podcasting, you might share your story about your first episode. Maybe you were nervous, or you didn't have the right equipment, or you weren't sure that anybody would listen, but you did it anyway. And now here you are, helping others find their voice. That kind of story does more than teach. It inspires. It says, I've been where you are, and I know the way forward. It is not enough to share one story and hope for instant trust. Trust is built over time through consistent storytelling. Every story you share adds another layer of connection, another reason your audience will believe in you. Think of trust like a bank account. Every story deposits a little more into that account. And over time, those deposits add up, creating a solid foundation of trust and loyalty. At the end of the day, podcasting is an intimate medium. Your audience isn't just listening, they're inviting you into their lives. They're walking their dog, they're doing their dishes, they're commuting to work with your voice in their ears. That level of access is a privilege, and trust is what keeps it going. When your audience trusts you, they don't listen, they engage. They share your episodes, they leave reviews, they recommend your podcast to others. They become part of your community, and that is the real power of storytelling. So, why do stories matter? Because they're how we connect, they're how we learn, they're how we remember. Stories are the heartbeat of communication, and your podcast can become a platform that beats with authenticity and purpose. As we move into the next lesson, we're going to break down the practical side, how to craft stories that grab attention, how to hold that attention, and leave your listeners coming back for more. So I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for trusting me to guide you through this process. Let's make your stories unforgettable. I want to leave you with this. The world is full of noise, but your story is one of a kind. It deserves to be heard. And when you tell it with heart and with purpose, you don't just share your voice. You give others permission to find theirs too. I'll see you in the next lesson.